Lashes and Sashes podcast, I'm going to go through how I traveled around the world through pageants. So, as I say through and through, pageants are the launch pad that will open so many doors and opportunities to things you never thought possible or ever imagined. And even if you did imagine it, that's great. And if you didn't, still seize the opportunity. So for me, I had traveled here and there given that my family is from Hong Kong. So I'd see them when I was a kid, but it wasn't until I was 21 I did my first international pageant overseas, and it really did change my life. So I have been competing in pageants for about 21 years now, but it was when I was 21, or I think I was 20 at the time. I was preparing to compete for a pageant system that really aligned with my values in sustainability. So that system is Nation of States. Formerly, it was part of the Miss Earth organization, and I have my whole platform dedicated to sustainability. So it really aligned with me. I didn't end up winning the title. I received what was known as an elemental title, so I was a runner up. But even with that, I'm still to this day so unbelievably grateful for the Nation of States organization and the people that are involved in the system, because I still had the opportunity to represent the USA in an international pageant. So competing in pageant systems that have the prize package be to represent the USA overseas at an international pageant, I don't see a lot of people in the US really look into those types of pageants, or maybe if you would technically count Miss USA, but for Miss USA, in order to compete, you first have to compete in your state pageant. And it's already very challenging to win your state title to then be in Miss USA with 52 or 51 of the best people from these state competitions. There are so many international pageants out there. And I think, well, first, it is really important to do your due diligence, research, see on Instagram who has competed in that organization. And if you have mutual friends with them, if you are friends with them on Instagram or Facebook, so you can get their personal review of their experience. I think this is really important as a female in modeling or pageantry, because you don't want to be put in a situation where you're being taken advantage of. You want to make sure you're going to reputable organizations, you are working with people who have your back and trust you. So with that in mind, once you go through that and you know that this is a good organization or that you are going to be taken care of in the international pageant, it seriously is so cool, because you're not just visiting this country and exploring all the cool sites this country has to offer, or city that it's held in. A lot of times these international pageants, if they're a bit longer, you can go to multiple cities within the country, which is pretty cool. But you also are competing with girls that are all representing different countries. So you are in the most immersive type of culture shock that I think is very rare to experience. I think the only thing that was as similar was attending the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Conference, where people that attended were from all around the world. But in this case, in a pageant, it's people from all around the world, but they're all about the same age. They're all women in the modeling and pageant industry. So it's cool because there's things that you relate to, and then there's different cultural things that really open your mind to the world. And I know at my first international pageant, it really made me so proud to be an American and realize how ignorant I was of other countries and the world around me, because I inundate myself with really only US news. I don't look into how other countries are doing, how other cultures are doing, but all these other countries knew about US politics. They knew about issues going on in the US because of its influence in the world. So I'm so grateful that I had that experience so I can gain that appreciation and make more of a conscious effort to learn about the world around me and take the time to talk to other contestants to realize, like, oh, okay, this is what's happening in the world. These are the effects of post-colonialism in different countries. Here is how language was spread. There was even one contestant, we were on like a boat that went from one island to another, and I sat down with her for about 2 hours, giving her an entire history lesson, explaining how and why the languages we speak in North and South America. So it's eye-opening to everybody that competes and takes a part in international pageants. I have competed in Taiwan. That was my first international pageant. Then in Australia, Greece, India, Colombia, Malaysia, and now Vietnam. So that's a total of 7 different countries that I have been able to visit and see the whole surrounding areas. And what's cool is you get to see iconic landmarks when you're there usually, because if you think about it, for these international pageants, you are the tourism ambassador. You are promoting not only their organization, but their city, but their community. And the goal is for these international pageants that Miss USA or Miss Hong Kong, I would also represent where my mom is from, Hong Kong, will go back to their home country and land and share this. So it's one of the best international marketing tools, if you ask me. So with India, we got to see the Taj Mahal. When I was in Australia, I got to see the Sydney Opera House. And I was very impressionable as a kid, and I love different movies and things I see on TV, and I always hope to reenact those things. And so going to see those things in person as a title holder was so cool. And again, the opportunity to compete internationally wouldn't have been possible without the Nation of States pageant organization. I really have to give them a shout out, because I actually am the current Miss Nation of States. And it's a title that I hold with great pride. I love this pageant so much because it opened doors for me that I never thought possible. And then on top of that, it opened doors for even my mom and my sister. So with my mom, I'm going to warn you, I'm going to get in a tangent, and this is going to be pretty common with probably solo episodes or conversations that I have. But my mom had 4 kids, and she really dedicated so much of her time and energy to us. And pageants, the first time she even competed in the pageant was the first time I saw her do something for herself and not for her family. And she had been doing it here and there, mainly just supporting me and my sister, but through competing at Nation of States, she also had the opportunity to represent the USA and compete internationally. And I remember watching the live stream of her in evening gown, and I got so emotional because she is wearing the USA sash across her chest and really is fulfilling that American dream. She came to Hong Kong at like 19 years old with, pretty much nothing as a college exchange student at the Disney College program, and climbed her way up, and, now she was able to provide the dreams that I wanted so badly. And then from doing so, she's now able to provide the dreams for herself. And I thought that was so beautiful. And even my sister has been able to compete internationally. My mom competed in Philippines, my sister competed in Thailand, and it's just amazing to see how Nation of States had opened that door for us. And you really don't hear about it that much in the American pageant world. So we've competed there, and they also have a very inclusive group without, I guess, trying to be. I think there's some businesses out there that are not necessarily forcing it, but they're only now engaging in inclusivity in order to please the masses, which I guess in a marketing perspective you should be doing anyways. But I like the genuineness of being inclusive. I like starting out with your roots and your values being that way. And so for the Nation of States pageant, it didn't matter what your size, height, age, shape was in order to not only compete, but even have the opportunity to represent the US internationally. There are Mrs. and Ms. and Miss international pageants out there. And there are some international pageants that I've done that had a height requirement. So that's still something, I think that's really common also in the modeling industry, but that's also starting to change a lot in the US too, which is great. I need to recognize the fact that, yeah, I do have for sure a certain height privilege and even a certain level of skinny privilege that allows me to get into these industries a lot easier. But I think the most important thing is making sure people don't try to change themselves to fit into those molds, but we make the effort to change society as a whole to be more inclusive, more accepting, and provide more opportunities for representation. I have loved competing in international pageants so much. And really, that's most of the types of competitions that I've done as an adult. I would either compete at Miss Nation of States, Miss Florida USA, or the international pageants that were out there. And technically with Miss Florida USA, that in the long term is supposed to lead to Miss Universe. But for me, I didn't even make top 5. I was just trying to get there. And even now, I'm kind of like, I'm really content with where my pageant experience has taken me and all the travel opportunities that I've had. I can't wait. I will probably have an interview with my pageant bestie, Frida. She was Miss Universe Sweden, and she was my very first pageant roommate at an international pageant. So that was a really cool experience. And I think for those that are also interested in traveling the world through international pageants, I think the first thing you should do, and yes, I am totally biased, but compete at Nation of States. I think it's such an incredible pageant, and it's one of the best systems, not just because of the travel opportunities, but the people there are so genuine. They are good people, always willing to help and support and make the experience great. So even if you don't win the title or you don't get the opportunity to compete internationally, the national pageant, which you can have an appointed title to go into, is like a mini international pageant. They have little prelim competitions that they then send the video to international judges to compare. And then we go and explore different areas in the city. So when the first one I did was in Los Angeles, we got to see like a TV live studio audience recording. That was really cool. And then they had their pageant in Orlando, and I was actually able to work with them to do a volunteer event at Clean the World. And most recently at Nation of States, we had such a great time at the Arboretum, downtown Disney, and have just such a fun time getting to know the girls, getting to explore the city, and again, have that travel opportunity with the pageant and with just they're just there to have a good time and provide joy and happiness, I feel. So I love this system, and I'm so grateful for everything it's done for me to compete and for my family to compete. And, even if I never became what I saw on TV, which was Miss USA or Miss America, I could still be a USA queen or the Miss USA of this pageant system and still have, honestly, to a certain degree, an even cooler experience than what some of these other, what Miss Universe might have to offer, because their production stages, oh my goodness, it's beautiful. It blows my mind. It made me feel like a superstar on America's Next Top Model. So, but with that too, it's definitely different from American pageants. I think if you've competed in pageants in the States, the biggest difference I would say is, there's so many, but with the state pageant, normally you can stay in a room with your parents or with somebody else, and then they'll give you mainly just the competition and maybe like a few dinners and parties at the hotel. But in the international pageant, there's a lot more exploration, a lot more fun experiences and activities outside of the competition and hotel that you really get to experience. So it's not so much about the competition, but promoting that business or organization and giving these contestants just this really cool experience. I think another big difference between international pageants and American pageants that I feel like they should add into American pageants is secret judges. So sometimes in American pageants, I'd get irritated because girls would win or be rewarded, and they might be great on stage, but backstage, they might have a little behavior problem, or they're yelling at their parent, or they're being very disrespectful or ungrateful, and I don't know, rubs me the wrong way. And with international pageants, there is secret judges. You never know where they are. You don't know who they are, but it means that you need to be on your A game the entire time in the pageant. If you have an attitude, or if you're seen yelling at someone backstage, they will take out points. And with international pageants, because you're going out and about to different events and activities, Nation of States does this too, because it is like a small version or the American version of an international pageant. Those judges will take note of that, and they'll recognize, okay, this girl has been really great and she's helping the other girls with their dresses, or she's a good sport and she really cares. And so you're being rewarded for that good behavior. So I love the idea of secret judges, I think, because it has gone in my favor, but I'm curious to see what other people think about having it. I think anybody who's against having secret judges, I can't help but wonder, like, hey, is it because you're kind of snappy backstage or what? Because when it comes to being a title holder, you're not walking around in heels and a bikini or in an evening gown when you do events. You're usually in your lashes and sashes and whatever wardrobe, depending on the event, and representing yourself. And that's more going to be how you are like backstage or at an event. So I love the secret judge component, and I definitely think it should be integrated in all pageants. I think another thing I find really funny is it's really common in international pageants for girls to post a picture with them at the airport, their suitcases, holding their flag, saying like, on my way to whatever competition, because it's cool. You get to represent your country, and a lot of state USA title holders do it as well. But I mean, okay, let's be real. For an international pageant, especially for me going to like Asia, that's a 2-day flight, or I guess it's anywhere from like 26 to 35 hours of flying. There's no way I'm gonna look like a glamorous bombshell beauty queen throughout my entire time on the airplane. I've seen people do it though. I did go compete in Colombia, and those Latin queens, they do not play. They always look so good, even in like customs and immigration, and I doubt they could recognize me, but I could recognize them. So what I always do right when I check in, get my bags from baggage claim, I go straight to the bathroom and I put on my heels, I touch my makeup a little bit, I try to like curl the ends of my hair if I have the proper like a plug adapter to do it, or I'll just put it in like a nice tight ponytail. And so when I go in, I'm, my glam self and not my makeup self, and not my just got out of the plane self, because that's an entirely different person. Oh, big tip, in my opinion. I know a lot of girls do differently, or I guess it's unpopular opinion, but pack light, because I think some people like to flex that, oh, I brought 6 suitcases to a pageant and I brought my entire wardrobe and blah, blah, blah of shoes, a pageant girl, because we're maximalist. We like to get glam. We like to be over the top and bougie. I get it. But when you're in an international pageant, especially if you're going from city to city, you're going to have to carry all of those things from one place to another. And remember, some of these hotels, they don't have elevators, so you have to carry them up. And odds are, if you're trying to be cute for a pageant, you're carrying them up in your high heels. And remember, if you're from the US, it's kind of like that idea of Texas, like everything's a little bit bigger. So sometimes your rooms are a bit smaller and you can't fit 6 suitcases in your room, especially if you're sharing it with 3 other roommates that also have 6 suitcases. How are you going to walk around? How are you going to organize your dress? How are you going to hang stuff? It's just going to be ridiculous. So if most of the time the pageant will require you to have like a national costume and some sort of gown and maybe other stuff, it all depends. They usually have a packing list, but those are the general things. So don't overpack, because it's very easy for stuff to get lost. It's very difficult to carry. I remember one of the pageants, we had this sponsor that was like a teeny tiny car, kind of like a Fiat. And one of the contestants filled the entire Fiat with just her costumes. Forget humans, forget the wardrobe. It was just her national costume, because it was like this gargantuan headpiece and wings and all this stuff and a small car. So we had to fit, one of the girls had to lay on all 3 of our laps. So 3 people sitting in the back and then 1 person laying on the lap of her. And that was extremely uncomfortable. She had a really bad backache afterwards. So yeah, for the sake of everyone and for yourself, I definitely think it's important to pack light. Another reason why I love traveling through pageants is because I feel a sense of safety and security. Being a female by myself in a foreign country, speaking a language or not knowing the language around me, it's pretty scary to do that type of solo travel. Kudos to people who do, because I think they're so brave. But with an international pageant, you have the tour guide included with you. You have locals and people who are experienced in the area, not only there with you, you can have your bags in the bus and walk around, but they know what's the best things to look for, the best foods to find, where to check out stuff. So for that alone, I mean, I'd much rather travel through a pageant than figure out my hotel, figure out where I'm going to eat, figure out where I'm going to go. I do that from time to time for some trips, and especially when I studied abroad in Rome, and I realized how much of a princess I was because I was so used to competing internationally. It's like, oh my gosh, it's really overwhelming to come up with all these things. Now with ChatGPT, it makes it easier, but even to plan out those logistics, to call those people, to coordinate those things, it does take that stress away when you do it through a pageant. And I mentioned this on Misrepresented's podcast with Lisa Opie, but the stopover tours is also another way that I enjoy a more economically feasible way of traveling. And this has nothing to do with pageants. It's just if you're traveling far and you have a long layover, if your layover is 6 to 24 hours, a lot of the nice airports that are in, like, let's say Singapore Air, Emirates, Qatar Airways, they do stopover tours that are included or super cheap for you to visit the city for a few hours or even stay a night at one of their hotels. So again, female traveler tips for me is pageants and stopover tours. But I don't know if I would be ready yet to do a whole trip by myself if it isn't oriented through some sort of group or organization. Okay, that pretty much wraps up my travel episode. So again, if you have any questions related to international pageants, traveling, or even the Miss Nation of States organization, please send me an email at lashesandsashes@gmail.com or DM me on Instagram at lashesandsashes. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye. Oh, actually, maybe I should do it like a pageant. Signing off. I am your Miss Ultimate Grand Supreme Popcorn Kettle Colonel Jelly Bean Supra, Elizabeth Cran.